All right, so I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna be that positive when I'm talking about the games that came out over like the last 2 years, because in all honesty, I really didn't enjoy a lot of them. But I feel like 2026 is the first year in like the last 2 or 3 years where I'm just excited for a lot of games. There's obvious stuff like GTA 6, 007 First Light, and Crimson Desert. I already know I'm gonna enjoy those games. But then there's other stuff like Exodus, Judas, Blood of Dawnwalker is confirmed. The Expanse, hopefully it comes out next year. I'm sorry, not next year. It's early January. You get it. I didn't feel like this for like the last 2 years. And that was obvious considering the fact that fucking Astrobot won Game of the Year in 2024. That just showed how little interest I would have had in a year where that game won Game of the Year. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna always hate on that. That was ridiculous.
Holy Jesus. What is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's the fact that I've gone back and played a lot of the older games, like during that time period where I didn't care about all of the new games that were coming out, like Hogwarts Legacy. Cool. I don't give a fuck about Harry Potter. Y'all have fun with that. Or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 this past year. The first game was the most janky ass, boring ass game I've ever played in my entire life. Y'all have fun with that too. There's a couple of pleasant surprises, to be fair, that I did enjoy my time with, but it wasn't nothing like mind blowing. Like, I feel like this upcoming year, there's going to be a lot of mind-blowing games that come out. Even like stuff like Saros that and like Clockwork Revolution, whenever that comes out. But like, these are games that have been revealed that are going to come out over like the next year or two. They look incredible. They look insane. And if they can pull off what they show in their trailers, it's going to be an amazing next couple of years. But to get back to the point, I didn't enjoy the last 2 years. And so what I did was I went back and played a lot of the older games that I wouldn't have played before because I was playing Call of Duty. But then that went down the fucking shitter. And I was like, fuck this franchise after like 2022. And so I played a lot of the older games that I didn't get time to play back then because of Call of Duty. And I realized that you've heard this 1,000 times. The older games are better than the newer games. And it's not just nostalgia. It's like creativity and game design and blah, blah, blah. You get it, but I'm going to like add my 2 cents in it. Is it like games felt like actual pieces of art? And this also is important to note because of the use of Gen AI. The tools that are being used in terms of like AI tools is really worrying because I look back as like some of the creativity and some of like the very creative ways in storytelling and game design that was done back then. And I'm like, there's no way any of this will be achieved with like all the AI tools and all of the just the safe bets that have been going on with big companies and just doing constant remakes and remasters, re-releases, just going through the same franchises and milking them dry. And yeah, I've gone back and played like through PlayStation Premium, like a lot of games from the PS2. I'm like, bro, this game was way ahead of its time. This is crazy. Like, no way this game was made in 2005, 2006, but it was. And so then I play a lot of those older games. Then I play a lot of the games from like the 2010s era, like the golden age of gaming. And I'm like genuinely, I'm having some of the most fun I've ever had. I also don't have to sink in 100 hours just to get my money's worth out of a game that just feels completely bloated and just feels like there's collectathons and just like random just stuff to do like there is in most games today. It's just they're just so over bloated, and I can finish some of these older games in like 6 to 10 hours and have just as much fun in that small little time frame than I do in these big open world games with like 50 plus hours worth of content and just stuff to do. And so I feel like that's the big difference, is that games back then were much more of creative endeavors. Yes, again, I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but I'm just going to say it because I feel like I need to get my 2 cents out there. They were much more creative. They were much more intentional with their game design. I feel like that's something that people don't really talk about. The intention behind certain like systems, certain games back then often were built around like core mechanics or even one core mechanic that made the game interesting. Even if it wasn't that good of a video game, it made it stand out. I feel like games nowadays, they don't do that. They just go for the cookie cutter safe option. They bloat their games to hell and then stuff it full of like just random microtransactions and just cosmetics and nonsense. That's just the way that modern games are now. People are conditioned by live service games to experience games in this sort of way, where there's just so much to do and The moment there's not any seasonal updates and live events or whatever, they get bored instantly. They have that TikTok brain, and then they stop playing the game. I don't know. I feel like I just want us to go back in time like 10, 15 years, where games are much more tighter in scope, much more scaled down, but they had much more interesting concepts and premises. And for that, they stood out a lot more. And I feel like games like as a whole would be a lot more successful if they kept that in mind. There's a lot of indie games that are like that. There's a lot of double A games that are like that. Again, they're also not live service games. You gotta put that distinction now, because live service has tainted the fucking pot. It's so annoying. Yeah, I don't know. When I look back at the last 2 years, it feels like everything has just been, again, this like everything's gotta be turned into a live service. Even a single player game, it's gotta somehow be turned into, it has seasonal updates and additional quests and content, like Assassin's Creed Shadows and shit. Like, I'm just like, I really do not give a fuck about a game that there's a single player experience that later on adds like quests and cosmetics and different little bonuses and incentives to come back to the game. I want my entire package all there from day one. And if you got to make little fixes or tweaks to like balance or something, by all means, whatever, you can go ahead and do that. But like, adding additional stuff to single player games or just making everything live service by default, I feel like has really hurt overall just the experience that I've had with games, which is why these last 2 years I've not really enjoyed a lot of the games, because they've had some element of that. Maybe they've changed along the way in development, like Dragon Age, what's that dog shit ass game? Dragon Age Veilguard, right? Games that are single player, go to live service, go back to single player. There's so many games like that have been single player, like narrative games, that have switched to live service games, chasing that good money. Fuck that, bro. Like, make a good game first. Honestly, if you just make an incredible game and add live service elements on top of it, you get an Arc Raiders. Because Arc Raiders, without its live elements, is still an amazing game. But I feel like a lot of these companies, they come in with the mindset first of, how can we make this business model and structure fit this game, rather than making a great game and then adding that on top of it as sort of an additional factor. And I haven't even talked about performance, because that's a whole nother thing in of itself. That's like step number 0. If your game's not fucking optimized, it literally does not matter how good it is. Such as Cyberpunk. I absolutely love Cyberpunk, but to this day, still, I'll start getting crashes like every 2 hours or something. So, like, performance is like step 0. Make sure that your game is like runs well, at least. I understand it's not going to be a game with 0 bugs, but if your game doesn't run well, no one's going to care how good it is and how deep the mechanics are or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about over like the last 2 weeks or so, since all these trailers are starting to come out and a lot of these games are starting to have announced release dates. I'm really looking forward to a lot of them, but I'm like cautiously optimistic, because I've been burned in the past with a lot of games that looked incredible, and then they just had a lot of bullshit, or they weren't optimized, or whatever it was. The story wasn't as good as I thought like its last game's story was. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the older games I've been playing have really made me see a lot of the flaws with how current games have been made, and I just hope that studios have learned from the failures over like the last 2 or 3 years, and have really started to hone in on what players actually want. Which is, honestly, if you look at any of the other like hundreds of videos on the internet, it's not fucking hard to see what players want. Literally just go to the gaming tab on YouTube, look at any of these videos talking about Bethesda's missteps or unoptimized games, or whatever. You can literally go on the gaming tab on YouTube and see what they're talking about and see what players want. It really is not that hard. But yeah, that's all I really had to say about the games that came out over like the last few years, comparing them to the older games I've been playing. I'm not really sure what I'm going to title this. Probably, I don't know, older games better versus newer games. Some just generic ass title. Whoever wants to watch it can watch it. This is really just for me to rant and to just say what I hope the games of 2026 and 2027 can achieve, and can really make me like about them again, that I really didn't like about the games that came out over the last 2 years. But yeah, anyways, that's really all I got to say. Comment down below what y'all are excited for in 2026, what games y'all are looking forward to. And also comment down below, what are some of your favorite PS3, Xbox 360 era games that you've played that have not played or heard of? I would really like to know what some of y'all favorite games from that era. But anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you next time.